Hi guys, today's video is something of a retrospective as I've been sort of mulling over my past work from 3 years onwards and looking at how my writing is developed and developing, especially as I'm working on not only my dissertation but my third book as well, and sort of trying to learn from the mistakes I've made in the past. So we of course head back to the beginning in 2018 when we published Lust and Liberty. So this video is actually dedicated to finding a few things that I would change about Lust and Liberty if indeed I were drafting and preparing to publish or now republish it today. So that's what we're going to explore. So the first thing is adverbs. Now, when I was first sort of introduced to the idea that adverbs are bad, I was kind of against it. It's one of the few things that Stephen King and I disagree on, or disagreed on anyway. Just because from everything that I had read up until that point, it not necessarily riddled with adverbs, but they were used. They were used in a reasonable quantity, something that I would have thought was perfectly normal. But moving forward is sort of a more modern and commonly accepted rule that use adverbs as little as possible. And so then looking over certain parts of Lust and Liberty, I realised that it is indeed inundated with adverbs, sometimes utterly unnecessarily. I believe snapped caustically is one of them. One that at the time I must have thought, that sounds nice and powerful, and then when I reread it a few months ago, I sort of winced and went, oh God, why? And so, that is one of the things that I would do if I were redrafting Lust and Liberty. I'd go through and I would take as many of those adverbs out as I could. Second one is to reduce the font size and the margins. So it's not necessarily to do with the story itself, but how it's laid out for the paperback version. I mean, again, bearing in mind it currently sits, the way it's been printed, is 12 point font size with single spacing. And yet, as anyone who has actually read the paperback version will realise, that there are about 13, 14 lines a page. It's very, quite well spaced out, which wasn't on purpose. So that would be something that, and it was something indeed that we made sure was not the case again. We didn't repeat the mistake, is what I'm trying to say. With Sin and Secrecy 2 years later, I made sure that we reduced it down to 10 point. It is still single spaced, but the margins are a hell of a lot narrower. So there's more on a page, which is just as well, because if we'd repeated with the same layout, we would probably have been looking at another 300 pages worth to an already relatively long novel. It's already, Sin and Secrecy is already 600 odd pages. So turn it to 900, it's it's expensive enough to print them without adding another 300 to the mix. So we would do the same with Lust and Liberty. We'd reduce that down and make for a much more compact little book. With that in mind, would leave us some room to maybe expand certain storylines. As with Sin and Secrecy, which obviously many of you know I actually wrote first, and then Lust and Liberty came along as the prequel, and then I just decided to publish them in the right order. When I was going through it, I took out a number of the subplots that I thought they just didn't belong there, really. I'm a big subplotaholic. I like creating characters. It's a curse of mine. It may well be a blessing. In the grand scheme, it's a bit of a curse. And so yeah, I had to take out a few of them, and as such, I think a couple of the major subplots suffered in Lust and Liberty. For example, the key subplot, which is between Mrs. Hathersage and her nephew-in-law, Luke Warwick, and a mystery in her past, got a bit diluted, really. And I feel as though that would need a bit more fleshing out if I were to rewrite it. I mean, no one's ever really complained about it in feedback, but if I were to do it, I would like to see what else I could sort of add to it. And another thing was Mrs. Ermstone. She is meant to be a sort of deuteragonist of the story, a second major character. And looking back over it, I realise really that she has very little to do in Ultimately. She is by and large comic relief, whereas she was meant to be so much more than that. She was meant to be so much more an important character, which I made sure she had more of a key role in Sin and Secrecy to compensate for that. But yeah, I feel like her character suffered more dilution than necessary. So if I were to go back, I would make sure that I featured her more to give her more to do. And while we're on the subject as well of characters and character development, I would overall, this is final point by the way, look to improve the development of Lady Verrington, our major character. The feedback has suggested that she doesn't really develop that much, which, you know, I suppose in retrospect is a fair point. It was meant to be more of a circle than an arc for her in terms of her sufferings and the sort of journey that she goes on. She begins aggrieved, she ends aggrieved, but it was more towards her political attitude where the main change was meant to be. And again, looking back, I think it could have been more gradually expressed and more clearly expressed at the end. So yeah, I think we would need to go back over her, refine that storyline again, just to make more of a definitive development for her. You may disagree or not, as the case may be. Either way, I'd love to hear your thoughts. So if you have actually read Lust and Liberty, I would really love to get your feedback. If you could leave us an Amazon review, that'd be fantastic. And if you haven't read it, then why not head over to Amazon and buy it? It'd be perfect for a summer read, if indeed we have much more of a summer. This is the UK. What can we predict? Not very much. But otherwise, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for viewing, as always. Chuck us a subscription if you can. There'll be more exclusive content coming, and including that pertaining to the upcoming new podcast, The Dale Hurst Writing Show, which is entering production and coming soon. Otherwise, stay well, stay safe, stay sane. I'm Dale Hurst. Goodbye for now.